Hello. Yeah, so this is package specialization meeting on the 27th of April. So the agenda for today is probably, I would say, let's quickly go over the status, where we are. And then I asked Isti to give an overview of the test framework that he has set up or that he's using. And then we can share some knowledge around it. Is that okay?
Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. So yeah, status. Where are we? The what is it? GitHub. GitHub. So the conditional SDK got merged. So that's the good thing.
Yay!
Yeah, that's a great thing. Yeah.
That makes our lives considerably easier. So it's very good.
Yeah, there's one small bug that we found, but it's probably not a showstopper. But there's one bug that we found, which is here. So the next thing is that. So these two, we should. I'll review them after ISO this evening. Isti, right?
Okay.
These are the libraries.
I've seen your last comment for the setters. I will add that.
I think it's better to remove because we have get struct and we get it all.
I agree. I agree. Yeah. Those are not really useful. I would never use them. So I totally agree with that.
Yeah. So let's do that, and that's also going okay. Yeah, so
I also did a review on a couple of Isti's PRs yesterday and this morning.
Yeah, so I think this one will be I think going because I think John approved. I think you did LGTM. So I think if the last thing is done, this one will be going. Helper function, I think Bala, you reviewed, so we should be okay with it, right?
Yeah, I think so.
There will be, so from the moment this is there, I will update these. So this will not be a lot of work because this will be very minor, actually. Yeah. Because we have the common library. So this will be very small going forward. Yeah. And then we are checking in the different functions are being checked in. So I think Ganesh did is not one. I think you did the DNN one, Isti, right?
Yes.
So interface is also almost ready, but I'm waiting for the other two. So it's actually ready. And then NF deploy, I know that Akash, I don't know whether he's on the call. Where is
No, it is very late, I guess, in India. So
yeah. So he is, I know he's working on it. So which means that actually we have, if we are okay, I believe we have,
I think
most of the functions will, so the library, we will be in pretty good shape here. And I started in the meantime to test the VLAN and the IP allocation code. So probably I will focus on this first, but I'm going to focus then on next week. But I started to test that in all the new frameworks and stuff like that. So I started working on that as we speak. To get it ready.
So I know the libraries will change a lot because of the foundational library changed, and the functions they are going to rebase with main, and then will be based on the new. Okay.
We have to rebase with main. The libraries are of course nice. They are not mandatory because we can work without, but if the libraries are there, it will be easier for them to consume them.
Probably we can prioritize merging libraries by tomorrow because I think they're going to be simple anyway, isn't it?
That's my goal. Yeah, so I'm trying to, if this one goes through, I'm going to focus. I get the libraries next, right? And then we can do the function. So that's the natural order.
Yes, agree. Yeah.
And then if we can focus on the test framework that Isti has we could, what I would like to do is set up, like more of, it's not a true end-to-end, but we could test the whole specialization independently of all the rest, which would be nice to do, I think,
Yes,
because
true.
then you have, because I typically, I see testing as a layered system as well. So you have unit testing, then every piece, we can add things on top of it. So then we have our own framework where we can validate things. And we have to see how it fits into the whole ecosystem and stuff like that. But so that's why I asked. I don't know whether I wanted to. Yeah, I don't know whether there's any other questions on the status.
So,
Fish.
I wanted to give one update to Wish. I know Wish, your hands raised, but I just want to give, since you raised it, I think we have the one that we discussed about auto approve. Not all auto approve. I think that is done. I believe, I think there is something merged by Rado on the test infrastructure on the infra side in infra repo. I think probably we may have that done where at this point of time, any check-in would need explicit to approves by two different members. Since you raised that, I just want to give that update. So yeah, please, I know you have your hands raised. Go ahead with your question.
Okay. So the test framework that we're talking about, is it parallel to what that Google Tools repo has? Is that what ISTE you're working on?
It's the same. I think it's the same.
It's the
Yeah,
same?
yes.
Yeah.
But I will tell you very quickly. It will be really quick. I will show you. Yes. So
okay, fine.
we are using what was in the upstream SDK, and we added some trivial. So we basically added something similar that tests not the whole output, but just a part of it.
Okay. Cool,
These are some extensions that ISTE did as a help.
Yes.
This is a PR if you're interested.
I will answer that in detail.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks.
So
if there is no further question, I think ISTE, you can take the floor. So I will stop sharing. Right? Yeah.
For the status, I will have two other things, but okay. So let's get through this. No. Let's get through with this, and then we will have time after that. So screen 2. Let's do a nice. Oh, I thought that we will have a nice infinite number of things. Okay, you are now sharing. So to be honest, I didn't prepare any slides or anything, but I will quickly show you how I tested my DNN function and what did I use for that. So I'm writing one particular KRM function. It has its own directory in the Big Nephew repo under KRM function, and this is this DNNFN directory. If you can see, there is only one Go file that ends with _test, and even in that one test file, there is only two very tiny test cases. One is the golden tests, and the other is the failure case tests. And both of them are calling out to a kind of a test framework. So if I will quickly show you the main implementation of a KRM function, and you will say, oh, this is the coverage, don't care about I don't know how to remove the coverage, but toggle coverage. Oh. Yes, here it is. But you will see that basically it consists only, in this case, 3 callback functions. All three of them are quite simple, and one also very simple main function. So while I could add unit tests, and I may add in the future, what is really important in case of a KRM function, then if I give a particular set in the standard to the KRM function standard input, then it will output the expected result on its standard output. And that is what these golden tests Go is testing. So it is not a unit test. It is also not an integration test. It is somewhere in between. You can call it a module test or a component test or a middle-sized test, but it tests the whole KRM function in one. But that's it. That's all.
Yeah, I
Thank
saw
you.
that.
So this is in addition to the unit tests, Istvan, just to understand.
Yes, so it should be additional. So it is parallel to the unit tests. Besides this, you could add unit tests. I'm trying to explain why I do not have a unit test, because I could add, but again, testing these desired on resources list or update DNL resource list function is less meaningful than test the whole KRM function. But of course, the real, because so nobody else calls these callbacks but the SDK. So we want to test these callback functions in the context of the SDK. Does it make sense?
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. Yes, I am lazy and I'm trying to get away without writing the unit test. That is absolutely true.
See, so this is a bit more exhaustive, right? Of course, if this works, most likely the chances of hitting a bug is going to be very small, right? So yes. In this case, so that's why we are focusing on this Bala and Vish instead of going on unit testing, because this is really testing the function as it will be consumed totally. So including even the SDK.
So, and you will see that I can create my.
Sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to add what Wim said, that you will see that I can create much more meaningful test cases for this kind of testing than I could for unit tests. You will see that.
For unit tests, basically, in this particular case, when I'm looking at this function, it requires it would require some mocking before you can actually, is what I feel.
Right? Yes, or at least to create cube objects and a list of other cube objects. Yes.
Yeah, the idea here is, if I were to unit test this, I'm looking at a bunch of if conditions and paths that you are actually doing, right? So that would be the scope for testing of the unit, to say that, oh yeah, I'm doing that properly and making sure that I've not missed it. So that would be the motivation.
Yeah.
And if you have to do that, there needs to be some mocking that needs to be done. Just saying it as a comment, that's all. Yeah.
Yes, I would have to mock the SDK itself, basically.
There are things like objects, like the DNN function object, the function.cube object that can be mocked, basically.
Yes.
I mean, the reason I say that is from a previous experience that Bala and I had when we were working on OVIN Kubernetes. That is where even Bala had mentioned about how using an interface can help mock some of the functions.
Yes.
Yeah.
True.
I mean, we could certainly. I mean, that would have been my interest in actually trying to help out in terms of unit test. Of course, I'm stretched, so need to look at it at some point of time.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not against unit tests.
Yes,
I'm saying that KRM functions are special, because and not just I'm saying that KRM functions are special. The way we are building KRM functions, by building it on top of we have a big SDK and a very thin layer on top of the SDK. And what I'm saying is that this is a special case when it is more meaningful to test the whole thing together than just
integration
this
or
layer on top.
Yes.
It is not end-to-end from the perspective of nephew, but is end-to-end of perspective from the perspective of one KRM function. Yes.
Correct. I mean, I know you also mentioned about using the SD-in and SD-out. That's the way it works, because I was able to, like, I was trying to figure that out on the Golang debugger. I was able to get that done, and I was supposed to proceed to see how I can write some unit tests, but never got to that point. But I see your point. So right now, if you look at one of the things we had talked about, you have usually large number of unit tests and a lesser number of integration or component tests, and even fewer end-to-end tests. In this particular case, it seems to me that you're saying that, hey, it makes sense more to do that component or integration level unit test is what you were able to achieve easily, as compared to taking the route of mocking it and trying to go off and do that, unit test. Makes sense. I understand the context.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. By the way, Isti, I have one question. I raised my hand. So could we use the same thing for multiple functions?
Yes. So how it works, and I will show you. So this test,
because that's what I'm. Because that's what I want to do, is basically set up an environment beyond this, where we I put all the functions and we make them. We do a few tests in harmony, if you will, if you know what I mean, right? I think it works, right?
The short answer is yes, and I will tell you that I'm already doing something very similar. But okay, so this test helpers module, you can see this is in the kept function SDK, basically the upstream SDK that we are using. It is a package in that, and it has a method called run golden tests that you only have to give, but it are two things. One is a pass. In this case, it is the test data/golden, and this is the answer to you, Wim, is a FN runner. That is basically the KRM function. So you can have multiple of these calls one after another, giving different KRM functions. This KRM function is basically a packaged version of the run method of my KRM function.
So we could create a pipeline that we have. We could create a pipeline that we have inside of the kept file, but through, let's say, listing these each through the same pipeline in a certain test environment, right?
But we have another option as well. Yes, we can, and there is another option. So let me show you first. So in this test.golden directory that was given to this one call, this test helpers run golden test call, there are subdirectories in this case, 5 of them. All 5 is a different test case. Let's start with this create owned resources. This is a sunny day scenario. We expect if you have a DNN object, then we expect to create its own resources, in this case, IP allocations. If we look into this directory, you can see a bunch of YAML files. It looks exactly like a kept package. We have a kept file, not much in the kept file, no conditions, most notably. We have a data network resource that is our primary resource. We have the configuration that will be injected by the package variant set during fanout. The only suspicious file in this directory is this underscore expected YAML. So what will happen is that everything except the YAML starting with underscore will be fed into the input of the KRM function. And then the output will be serialized to YAML. And that YAML, the output is a resource list resource, and that YAML will be compared to this, whatever is in this underscore expected YAML. You can see that in this expected YAML, there is one resource that is a resource list. That is what the KRM function is supposed to output, and it has basically two main fields. One is the items, the list of Kubernetes resources, and the other one is not shown here. It is called the results. That is also a list where you can list errors, warnings, information, anything else. So multiple results you can list there. So in this case, what you can do is that we are testing that if the DNN function has a pool in it, then in the expected result, we expect to see in the item list an IP allocation whose owner is pointing to the data network object and has all of its specification filled out based on all of the information that we gathered from the kept package. So that is a very straightforward thing. So far, it is understandable, I hope.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so one thing is that the output is compared character to character, byte by byte, between two YAML files. The YAML representation of the so the output, really the output, written on the standard out of the KRM function, and this file. And that makes this kind of testing quite fragile, meaning if you change the algorithm even so slightly, maybe your output is semantically basically the same, but you have a new field or I don't know. So it might happen that the output will change slightly, and then you have to align your test. So that is a serious drawback of this, that it is very good for regression tests. So if you are refactoring and you want to make sure that the refactored code is outputs exactly the same. Of course, this is addressed in a manner in the in this run golden tests. So a lot of things are sorted in alphabetically if it wherever it makes sense. So the files are always read in a particular order, and so on and so on. However, that's the case. So basically, we are comparing at the end of the day, we are comparing two YAML files byte by byte.
So
And
is that doing see, one of the things I was reading about this KPT in push, when it does the diff, it says it does the semantic comparison rather than doing the pure. So is it when the diff is done by this the base SDK here, is it doing something similar, or is it doing pure?
No. In this test, I can I can show you a failed test. So first, let's just to be sure, I will run the test so that I just want to be sure that they are passing right now, and I will show you a failed test. But what you will see is really a diff between two test files. That this line is different than it should be. And what you mean is yes, it makes sense, and we are doing that kind of comparison in the code of the KRM function. But this tests that the KRM function outputs exactly, if this is the input, this should be the output. So it is really a lambda function.
Okay.
Okay, I will I will demonstrate this failed test case with the next test case. So I have another test case that I want to show you, and this is related to what Wim is asking. So when after this function detected that there is no IP allocation for this DNN object, and it created one, that is what it's supposed to do, then basically the output of this function that is in this expected YAML, including the IP allocation, will be the input almost of this next test case, that is the set DNN status. You will see that in this set DNN status test case, I already have an IP allocation as an input. It is the IP allocation is already part of the package. The status is already filled, so we expect that the IP allocation specializer already did the allocation, filled the status, and if you look into the kept file, you will see that the related condition is also set to true. The condition for this particular IP allocation is already set to true, and then this test case tests if this KRM function is able to detect that, okay, now the allocation has already happened, everything is fine, and what it should do in this case is to write back. So this is the input data network without any status, and in the expected output, we expect that it will write back the result of the allocation into the status of the data network. And that is what it does, by the way, right now, because all the tests are now green. And that is how we can test. Basically, instead of creating the pipeline, what we can do, Wim, is to create these intermediate CAF packages. So we create the CAF package of in the state that that is when the allocation has already happened, but the status of the DNN is not yet filled, and things like that. So we can test if.
Yeah, but you cannot run them in sequence. You can also run them in sequence, right? So that you go through the whole pipeline that you see. Because we will have different tests, right? We have I call this function test for the component, if you will, right? So, but then and where you will have to do these type of scenarios. But I also think we should do end-to-end tests.
Yes.
Which is scenarios, which basically does start from an input, checks the end result, and calls dedicated functions that actually are executed in the same way as our pipeline would be in the CAP file.
Yes, so that is more like an integration test. We can, by the way, try to run an actual pipeline there with for example, with the capped CLI, or yes, we can create a test case just for that. Maybe not in the test of one particular KRM function, but somewhere outside. But yes, we can do a test case when we create this pipeline, and we basically create multiple of these KRM runners from out of different KRM functions and call them one by one and feed the output of the previous one to the input of the next one. We can do that, yes, of course.
The question is, should we do that? I see that we have different options here, right? So yeah, sorry, let me.
Sure.
So we have different options here. We could I do this approach where we create some of these scenarios, and we would probably somewhere in the lib have a test integration test directory or something like that where we would run that. The other alternative, as you said, is we have the full kept. We do it with kept CLI.
Yes,
which means that you would have to run something. It's yet another environment. So what I like about this, it's part of the whole Go test framework, right? So it's easy to execute, if you will.
Yes, basically you are running Go test. So that is
yes.
What I'm doing is just running Go test, and well, yeah. So these test helpers, run golden test, can be seen as a test framework for KRM functions specifically. But by the way, yes, we can discuss this right now. At the first glance, I would vote for using the kept CLI and use pipelines. However, we would still have to mock what the specializer would do. That is not a KRM function. So we should figure out how to do that as well. But we can do that. We can run the pipeline, emulate the specializer, run the pipeline again, and because that is what will happen actually.
But we could also do a mocker of, so we could do the IP and the VLAN allocation somehow, and because the code actually will also use the SDK, right? So it just calls outside. So we could basically stop it to say, okay, you will return this when you see that, and then as such you can run all of this through this system.
Yeah, but then we would most probably use not even the kept CLI but Porch itself. So then we would test with Porch actually. If you want to mock the specializers.
Yeah, but I would mock them in a way that you can actually use them as a function runner and run them in this framework, right?
So, I see.
So the advantage that I see with this is that it would ease the execution. Ease the execution pipeline because it goes via the whole Go test framework. So I don't know how other people feel or think about it. But that's what I like about it, because you have a framework already that execute tests and runs tests, gives results and all of that stuff. Whereas if you go to the kept CLI, which we also have to do probably in an end-to-end scenario, but it's you have to typically build a system around that, which is not existing. But okay, maybe let's first have Vish comment, and maybe there's other people who have a view on that.
Yeah.
Well, I had a comment earlier about something you showed in the expected.yaml. I had a question about that. If you can go back to that expected.yaml file that you had shared. I was looking at the status, and then it's the resource list, right? Is it still part of the resource list?
But this status.
Yeah.
So there is a status of the data network, and there is a status on the kept file that is important for us because the conditions are there.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So actually, I didn't realize this status was on the data network, because I was expecting, if you look at the status for the data network, I was expecting to see conditions, but I saw pools, but this is a custom resource. Okay.
Yes, this is the data network. Okay. And yeah, the conditions are in the status of the kept file. That is also a resource. Yes.
Okay. That's what I wanted to just make sure that my understanding or what I was looking at that when you were talking about it was right. Okay. That's it.
Yes, and for example, if now we are talking about it, in this situation, the DNN function doesn't just set the status of the data network, but it also sets this condition to true. Basically, the condition belonging to the data network object itself is set to true as well. So that is also happening, but we are testing all of this, of course. Okay. Okay, and so I only added one thing, and that is that sometimes we expect the KRM function to fail with an error. So the main function, the run function of the KRM function to return with an error. And if you want to test this case, then you can use a very, very similar function. Okay, let's go back here. So we have these test helpers run golden tests that we are only using coming from the upstream SDK. And we wrote something called similar. It is called run failure cases. It gets very similar input. So it's still like in this missing cat file, there is still, and the input is still a cat package that is fed into the KRM function. And for example, in this case, you can see there is no cat file in the input cat package. And what I expect in this case, so that the KRM function returns with an error and that error contains this string. Or in another case, a similar case, this is the input, the same as before.
A question on
input,
that.
Yeah.
So it is possible that in some cases, a kept file doesn't have to be there, right? Because if it's a bunch of KRM resources in a certain directory, you will be able to generate, there should be a way to generate that. At least that's what I read.
Yes. But we do not have the information for generating everything in there. Give me a kept file. Come on, where is the kept file?
Here above.
Yeah, so here it is. That is a kept file. So, for example, the name is already a big question. Maybe we can figure this out. If it's in a directory inside a Git repo, then the name of the directory or the name of the repo we can use here. But again, that would be heuristics. And the pipeline, the other thing is, of course, if it is needed, we can put something here. Basically, the name is the only thing that has to be figured out. If it doesn't matter, then we can generate one.
Yeah, but it's I think, yeah, Bala has his hand raised, I think, but for us the kept file is mandatory, Vish, right? Because otherwise the whole thing doesn't work, right? So because we will not be able to set conditions other than the kept file. So and I think even I think the SDK does a check, or maybe I was wrong.
I mean, what I'm just sharing the half-baked information I have. That's all. So I'm just, it's a innocent question is the way I'll say it, because I'd read that if you had a bunch of resources, KRM resources, if you made a kept function call to do a get on that, it'll automatically generate one for you if it is not already there. But then you're saying that is not an interesting case for us, because our kept files will actually have some pipelines, and will have pipelines with validators and mutators, and that is what.
Yeah, we will not do anything unless we have a kept file, right?
Yeah, I mean, and most likely the mutators and the validators, right? Because that's where our kept functions are coming in, basically. Okay, I understand that. So because for anything else, which is just a KRM resources, which is a backward compatibility that they have, even if there's not a kept file, what I think I read in the documentation was it'll generate a kept file for you, but of course it will be missing all the, there won't be any validators and mutators. I see the point.
And for us, in the SDK is checking if there is a kept file or not. We will return an error if we don't have one in the SDK.
Yeah, basically that is what this test case is checking, that if we are returning with this error.
Yeah. Iswan, let's finish your finish your cases. My discussion, I raised the hand mainly because of the other topic we were discussing. Wim yourself about the end-to-end testing. We'll come to that, but I'll let you finish your all the cases.
The only thing that I haven't shown you is that another case that you can test. I already said that in the output there is a list of items, that is the Kubernetes resources that are outputted, and the list of results. And sometimes you want to test that only test that there is a particular result is in the list of results. In this case, we test that if this is the input, then we will, in the result list will contain a result that is an error severity and has this message and points to this particular resource. So that is also something that you can test now, and that is sometimes useful for testing failure cases.
Okay, so basically
that's it.
If the site code is missing from cluster context, okay.
Yes.
So if you go to the cluster context, please, let's see the cluster context file. Yeah. Okay. That's missing.
Yeah, that is and we have
because for us,
we have multiple cluster contexts here with conflicting info. We are testing this as well. We have two cluster contexts in the same package with edge 1 and edge 2 in the same field, and that is a conflict. And similarly, we want an error in the result list.
Okay.
Go on.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, you demonstrated we can do success cases, failure cases, and also the failure cases. You can also figure out specific failures in individual resources.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
The only bad thing is really the semantic validation of the file, that it's strict, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's almost like a byte comparison rather than semantic. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. I will not lie to you. That is not ideal.
Yeah.
But okay. I mean, yeah.
If you're done with that one, if you go to your test file, not the where you call the tests, is one
like this one.
Yes. So here, I think this is where we were discussing, right? Wim was kind of pointing out how we could make use of it. So here, let's say we want to run end-to-end tests. So let's say, first of all, you demonstrated two things. When the IP allocation is not there, that resource is generated. And if it is there, then the status is updated with the conditions. So if we were to use this method for the whole end-to-end pipeline, like, so basically we need to generate every intermediate state as an expected.
We could do potentially. That's an option, or you don't have. You can, or you don't have. You can, and you don't have to. So we could build up the test cases in that way. But yeah, Isti, go ahead. Yeah, maybe you had a different.
I would suggest that to have these kind of tests in every particular kept function, KRM function. So for DNN FN, the DNN function lets generate all of these particular intermediate cases and test that the DNN function works correctly. And somewhere outside of the text function, somewhere in lib or in the KRM functions directory, we can have the pipeline kind of test that we miss talking about. That is the big integration test cases. When we can do that, it will require some work, but we already have some functions here in the test library, not just its run failure cases, but okay, I cannot show you right now because it is in another pull request, but we have some useful function that we can use to feed the output of one function to another function. It can be done quite easily. And in between, sometimes, as Wim said, that is a very good idea, that instead of the specializers, we can just inject a mock KRM function that emulates what a specific specializer would do. So I do not have an example for that, but we can do that.
But if you mock it, if you could mock it, but the thing is, I think Wim's idea is, given the top level inputs, and he wants to run all the way, all the real functions, all the real outputs, so that you get the final output. And then that final output needs to be compared. So my understanding, based on, again, my understanding could be wrong, based on here, what I'm suggesting, based on this, let's say we have this from network, we have a cluster context, we have interface, we have DNN, we have IPv LAN, and then eventually we'll get to an NF deploy. I think that's what I think Wim's spirit of Wim's comment is, and then eventually we will generate a EF deployment, right?
Yes.
So that whole end-to-end, given the input, if we were to use this method, then it will undergo a lot of intermediate states, right? In fact, calling the same function twice, we are calling the interface function twice as well.
Yeah.
So if we were to do that using this method, that means in the happy path cases, I think we could structure so we have that overarching goal. So probably we could structure our happy path cases in individual functions in such a way that so in individual function happy path cases, we know we have all the intermediate cases and the final case. And then probably you're suggesting we could call it from a top level one. We could do that. For that, probably the output of each one of the the challenge there would be output of how do we feed the output of this function, for example, to let's say back to the interface function. How do we do that?
So I'm thinking of that. So we should have a big test, a Go file basically with a big test where we import all of the KRM functions, like this one, the interface function, whatever we have.
Yeah.
Then we have the node function and the what is it?
Deploy.
NF deploy function, exactly. So you import all of that. We create a test case. And yes, and okay, I don't know what this is. That's the test case. And yes, we give it an initial input. So for the same way we parse a directory with a cap package.
Yeah.
So we will have an initial input, and we can grab all of these modules as callable KRM function with this,
like that, right?
Resource, with this one.
Correct. So like that, right? So, but the first question I think, Isti, which we didn't really answer, I think, is can you look at intermediate results? I think you could not.
Yes. So this will, I can call the run function of this, and this will result. This will output a resource list.
Correct. So we could validate that. So
that's true in the expected output, right? That's the output.
No. This is not a test function. This is actually the same. If you see my main function, the actual main function, it creates a similar thing. When we are not testing anything, then I create a similar thing, and I give it as a parameter my run function, and I can call this. That is, I think it is called process, the method, but whatever, there is a method when I can actually run the KRM function. I will give it the input, and this is the output. And this is not even a YAML. This is a resource list struct. So this is a Go.
And we could check that if you want, right? We could.
From that.
We could
sorry,
check that.
Go ahead, Wim. Sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So that's what I think I would do, right? Because that would be very beneficial, because sometimes it fails at the end, but then where did it stop, right? So we could do something like that where we actually validate even the intermediate cases.
Yes, I think this is exactly what I wanted to know. So basically we are feeding in the RL1 into RL2. So can we, so in the real world,
it's the same as the real world. The real world is the same, Bala, right? Because what happens is you run a function, you update the resource list, which actually updates the file, right? And then you run the next one. And so it's a staged execution, right? So it's exactly how it would be run in the real life. Of course, you have some real-time behavior that you are not probably 100% emulating, but in my view, if you look to what the kept file, the kept pipeline is today, it's really a sequential list of running through things, and it takes the input, the output is the input to the next guy.
Yes. So this is what I wanted to. So if you see the structure of this is slightly, yes. So this is good.
Something like that.
Yes, this is good. So basically, the advantage with this is we are not necessarily in our expected, we do not need to generate expected output for every intermediate step. In this particular case, we generate the output. Yes, we will generate the expected output only for the final one, and then we use generated the resource list from each step as the input to the next one.
And we could even do checks there if you want. If we really want to make it, we can even do checks.
Yes, yes. This
And then
cool.
what I like about it is that you're completely independent, right? That's for me the good thing, because otherwise you have to set up this and that and that and
Yes.
that and
So-
that's
Yes, exactly. This is one thing I wanted to discuss. So yeah, thanks, Steve. This is very nice. This is yeah, I mean, this could be this could be our end-to-end testing mechanism for the function.
no. Yeah, for the see, it's good to have that, or at least my view is, because see, if we set up the whole thing, there is so many things going on, right? It doesn't work. Okay, where do you start, right? So it helps us also to do some more validation. Now,
Yeah.
of course, the question is, where does this live, right? Where should we, if we go this, first of all, should we do this? Is the first question. The second thing is, where should that live? Should that live in the? We could put it somewhere in KRM functions and somewhere put an end-to-end test or something like that.
Should we call it integration test or pipeline test, or what is?
Yeah, so, yeah, I think.
So we will just create something here. In the KRM function, we will call integration tests, and we will have we may have a separate Go file for each test or something.
Yeah, cool.
Now the question is, does PROW, or how do we run this on a regular? Do we run this on a regular basis? Because normally it's only run when we check in and so on and so forth. That's when the unit test gets run.
Okay,
so
then
so that's the next question for me, is like, that's also where should it live, and how do we execute it on a regular basis?
So I will take care of that. It is easy. So but we will trick the whole system by putting in this integration test. We will put calling these tests in something called tests.go, and then what PROW does is that it runs Go test here in the root of the repo. I think it does something like this. Basically, it runs tests for, of course, this will fail spectacularly, this x66 test Go, but you know that. And this will, so because it is in the repo, in this KRM functions integration tests, this Go test that PROW does will include this integration test. So we can, I can take care of that these will be run automatically.
But does PROW does that on a regular basis, or only when
yes,
you check in or check out the code?
Yeah, it is part of checking the PR.
So, yeah, but do we run it? Because I would like to run it. Yeah.
So we could, yes, if it is not, then probably it's already doing for unit tests, right? Probably we could make it if at all. We could, that's I think that's okay. We could do that.
Because what I'm afraid of is the following, Isti, it's a non-issue, right? But so normally you get a PR, you do a change in DNN function, okay? So we run the test there, but now you also have to run the end-to-end test.
But so this is a PR. Okay, let's go to my actual PR for the DNN function, and so this is the pre-submit test, and it will not just test the directory where I made changes. It tests all of the packages in the Mafio repo. So until we have this one big monorepo or two with the API together, this is solved.
Okay, if that's the case, if that's how it works, then we're fine.
I can show you that.
No, yeah, okay, that's fine.
Actually, if you remember, I raised this as a concern. I mean, for now, it's okay. We have one big repo, but as it grows, that can be expensive.
Yes. Yes, exactly. So you can see that I only modified, this is my PR for the test lib, and it is testing everything. That is, for example, the tests for your SDK, and that's it, because nothing else in it. But okay. And
because that
this
begs back the question is, where should this live, right? But I think for now, yeah.
I think Isti, I think where Isti showed, it makes sense to me. I think
KRM function integration tests.
And then we can move it somewhere else if we have to. But okay, for now, that's what we'll try to make that work like that.
Yeah.
I think everybody agrees that this is a good idea, or does some people object to this?
It's a great idea in my view. Thanks, Isti, for doing it. One question I had for Isti is, I know you augmented with certain functions that was from the base testing framework, which is in the function SDK. So if you could spend maybe a couple of minutes explaining what they are, that's one question. The second thing is, should they go upstream?
Yeah, but the question is, so the answer is yes for both. So this is already in upstream. Actually, I just found it and use it. And this is what I wrote. So the testing the output of the KRM function byte by byte with the expected YAML, that is what is in the SDK, and testing only the error, only the results list, or only that, or expecting the KRM function to return with an error. Testing those, that is what I wrote. And I can go there. I can even go there. So these are my, come on. These are my functions. The same functions are in the PR, but so what I wrote is this run failure cases. Okay, I will. What is it? Coverage, toggle coverage. Yes, here it is. So this is what I wrote. It expects the same kind of directory structure as an input, and it can, instead of the expected YAML, it can either it detects an expected error.txt. In this case, it expects the function to fail with an error message, or the expected results YAML. In this case, I can show you one again. Here is an expected results YAML. It's a YAML file that is a list of results.
It could be either a YAML file or a text message.
Yes, but the name of the file is different in the two cases, because actually you can test for both if you, in a very, very same case. So you can even want the KRM function to return with an error and still also have a result in the output file. But that is, I know that is very extreme. It's not too likely. Okay, so that is the first thing that I wrote. And basically, most of the things that are here are either private functions for that. For example, this check run error is actually checking for this expected error txt if the KRM function returns with an error and the error contains the message. The check results checks the expected results YAML if all of the results there are actually returned with the function. And all else is helper functions that can be exposed, that are very useful. For example, I am using them, for example, in the set spec PR, because, for example, this must pass cube objects will pass a YAML file and returns with all of the cube objects in it. And if there is any error, it will just fail the test with a it will fatally fail the test. Similarly, you can parse exactly one cube object from a YAML file, and then it is either successful or you will fail the test. Or this parses a resource list from a directory. Basically, this is when I said that we will, in the here, we will have an input. In this chain, we will need an input for the first KRM function, and to parse it from a directory, that is what this does. So it looks in all the YAML or kept files, it parses them and creates a resource list. It is also looking for something called an fnconfig.yaml, where you can give a configuration to the KRM function. You may remember that each KRM function has two inputs. One is the list of resources, and the other one is a configuration. If you remember a pipeline, then this is the configuration that you can give in the pipeline. There is a YAML file for that as well. We are just not using it at the moment. And this is a helper function that shouldn't be in the testing library. It inserts a string in a file name right before the extension. It is very specific. It is needed in somewhere, so we can make this private actually. So maybe it should be private, because this is a very specific thing.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, thank you. I think probably we should do it upstream, just like.
Yeah, it's the same. I mean, we will do the same, because a lot of the libraries that we are creating, Dala, are things that we are missing in the upstream library. So Yeah, so I think a number of these things are intermediate pieces that eventually
Absolutely,
will be obsolete. But yeah, it makes our life easier right now. So
And
that's
they
why we
would,
are ready.
I think Google will be very happy.
Yes, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
The problem is right now we have a bit of a problem, at least, but it's not. But with the Google CLA, but it will be fixed from the moment it's done, because otherwise we could have upstreamed it directly. But,
Yes.
yeah.
I've already requested, as you have seen, Wim, to create a Nokia fork of these Google repos, and we will get a work around the legal issues, hopefully.
Yeah. Cool.
Awesome.
Awesome.
All right.
It's a great presentation, actually. I think
just one sentence, guys. I really wanted to talk about this, but this is still a problem to have this Go mod file in the root of the repo. I know that we do not have a time for this to discuss it right now. The workspaces are very good, and Wim,
I've used it myself when I set up my own environment to test. I actually did this.
Yes, it is very good. However, do I understand correctly? Then the suggestion is to remove the Go mod file from the root and use these workspaces instead. We would have multiple Go mod files in smaller modules in the big
repo, you still have
and we would use this to get them together back.
You still have the big one, right? So I can show maybe quickly, if you don't mind. Let me share my screen. I'll show you what I did myself. Where is my package? I'm doing too many things. Here, package examples. You see, so I did it myself. So I still have a Go mod file. You have a Go work file, which lists the workspaces, right? Here. So I have interface function, not function, and a deploy function. And then in each of those, you have your own Go mod file.
Go mod. Yeah,
but you have to basically do this. You have to say replace package examples with ... So everything that you consume from here, you replace. And then you can build this independently. So you have complete independence.
The problem is that we use this GoSec tool, and it will fail. The GoSec will fail because, again, we run the GoSec tool for the whole repo at once, and it will fail if it detects.
Even with this,
yes, even with this, yes, unfortunately, yes.
So we have to raise it to Rado then.
Yes.
Let's raise the issue. Actually, there is one more meeting. We may need
sorry.
to go to. Probably we can go to that meeting and raise their response.
Yes, we can do that.
Cool.
Okay.
Cool.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Okay.
Very good. Thank you. Awesome.
Thanks, Istvan. Great. Thanks, Pim.